It was madness. It was people running everywhere. The radio was chaotic. Your adrenaline's pumping 100 miles an hour. You're trying to figure out what's going on. Last thing Buddy did was got on the radio and screaming, I'm shot, I'm shot. That was kind of his last act of serving others, of trying to let others know what was going on.
The jury is now seated for the murder trial of accused Athens cop killer Jamie Hood.
My whole world just fell apart at that moment. I just remember kicking off my shoes so I could run faster and ran as fast as I could and gave him a big hug and just cried and cried and cried. Just all of our plans we had, the kids and the farm and growing old together, all those things would never come to be.
Hey, nobody needs the help until you do it, can you?
Okay, Johnny, okay.
When I realized I'm on the phone with this murderer, and I realized that he has people that are being held against their will, and one of the first things that came out of his mouth was, we have babies. It's real. It's real. At that point, it's like, oh, wow. What if he hurts one of these kids? I don't know where his mind's at, but I know what he's already done. I know what he's capable of.
So this is a picture of Buddy and I on our wedding, February 17th, 1996. We were both 19. Buddy and I met when we were in high school. When I first saw Buddy, I immediately loved his eyes. He had the longest eyelashes, and his green eyes, they were just ocean green, just beautiful green eyes. He was just very fun-loving and energetic and always joking and helping others, and he was just a joy to be around. We've been married 4 years when we purchased our new farm, and it hadn't been finished or anything. So we worked our regular jobs during the day, and then every afternoon we'd work on the house. We finished half the upstairs, and then shortly after was when Callie was born, and then Wyatt, so we all shared this one big bedroom, really. It was really small for the four of us, but, you know, it was fun. But that was always our dream, was to build our house here and you know, live the rest of our life here.
Mommy and the cow!
We were very happy. I mean, nothing's ever perfect, but it was as perfect as it could be, you know, with all the things and all the dreams that we were aspiring to do and working toward. Yeah, looking back, there's so many fond memories, and things were pretty grand at the time.
I got her now! She's stuck!
On March 22nd, 2011, it started out like any normal day. Work was busy, and it just worked out that I didn't get to talk to him right away. I guess it was around 11:30 or 12. He called me and said that he was at lunch. He was telling me, I think he and his buddy Charlie were eating at Chick-fil-A, and they were having a good day. And I told him that we were about to go to lunch, so I better let him go. But later that day, I realized he had left me a message. So I still have that message on my phone.
Hey, babe, just checking in. We hope you're having a good day. And I'll holler at you later. Love you. Bye.
This is the voicemail that I found later that I didn't realize that I had. And so thankful that I had that. We always ended our phone conversations with, I love you. So I think he just said, love you, but I'm glad that we always did that.
March 22nd, 2011 was a normal day for me. I had received a phone call from a Pierce sergeant in robbery homicide. And just the sound of his voice, he was frantic and said, "I need you to get back to office right now. We've got 2 officers that's been shot." And for me, it was like the world stopped. We had never experienced anything like that. So I wanted to know, what happened and who was it. This had all started earlier that afternoon when a man in the east side of Athens was kidnapped. He was held at gunpoint, put in the trunk. He was able to escape while sitting in a red light, and that's what alerted the authorities.
Okay, 911.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, I would like to report a kidnapping.
Okay, where are you at?
Luckily, I jumped out the boot of the car. They home tied me and everything. And I knew exactly who one of the dudes was. They named Jamie Hood.
And that's what started the manhunt. He had boloed that information out. Everybody who was working was aware of the kidnapping and aggravated assault, and the offender was Jamie Hood. And so during that manhunt, your adrenaline's pumping 100 miles an hour. You're trying to set up. You're trying to figure out what's going on. The radio was chaotic. It was madness. It was people running everywhere. He performed a traffic stop, and when he went to get out of his vehicle, he was basically ambushed by Jamie Hood. And at that moment, Tony fell to the ground. That day, Buddy was on patrol. He was also looking for the offender, Jamie Hood. And then he saw Tony had a vehicle stopped. So as Buddy's coming up the road, he doesn't know that Tony's been shot. And he just saw the offender running, and then Jamie Hood ran up to the side of Buddy's car and basically assassinated him.
Tony, stay with us, okay, buddy? Come on, buddy. Buddy Christian. Relax, buddy. I'm with you, okay?
Buddy was shot several times, and that bullet went in between his vest and entered his heart. Last thing Buddy did was got on the radio and screaming, I'm shot, I'm shot. But that was kind of his last act of serving others, of trying to let others know what was going on. As backup officers began to arrive at the scene, they immediately realized that Tony was still alive, and they immediately started CPR for him and got him medical care, and then went and checked on Buddy. And Buddy was already deceased. At that point, I shifted my attention to the scene, and I don't believe I was prepared for what I seen. It's just seeing him in that car and slumped over, and then on his computer, a picture of his kids, and just knowing what was going on at that moment. And this is my brother, this is my friend. And now he's paid the ultimate sacrifice. He's lost his life. And I had to stay focused because we had a job to do. And Buddy would expect us to do our job.
When we received the information that there had been an officer-involved shooting, that an officer was deceased, your initial reaction is, do I know him? Me and Buddy went to the same high school. Madison County is a really, really small community, and I was born and raised there, and so was he. I'd see Buddy around. I always heard great things about Buddy. You know, there's sadness, there's anger. There's an anger that comes, but you don't have time to process that at that moment. You have to go and do the job. The priority is to locate Jamie Hood. We got him identified, so now we have to apprehend him. You just think, hey, there's somebody out there that's gonna harm somebody else if we don't find them. At some point while I'm at the command post, we get law enforcement to basically just walk a line, searching through the woods. We knew that he was possibly on foot, but we didn't know if he was getting assistance. And my biggest fear was that one of his friends or colleagues or whatever had taken him out of the area. And tensions were high just because of the nature of the crimes that Jamie had committed and the fact that he hadn't turned himself in. You know, law enforcement thinks they're walking into a gunfight.
My mom called me, and she heard that there were 2 Athens Clarke County police officers that had been shot. And so she called me and was like, have you heard from Buddy? I said, yes, I just talked to him, about an hour ago at lunch, and he was fine. And as soon as I walked into work, my pastor was sitting there, the assistant chief, and then a good friend of Buddy and I's that worked at the police department as well. They were all standing there, and their faces, I could just tell that something was not good. I don't know what came over me because I turned around and immediately ran out the door and into the parking lot. If I can stop them from telling me this, then it's not really happening. And the gentleman that worked at the police department, Mark, he caught me in the parking lot, and I just, dropped to the ground. I asked him, where, can we go see him, and, where is he? And he just shook his head. That was really hard because that's all I wanted to do in that moment was go be beside him. And I, did not know what to do, and, my whole world just fell apart at that moment. Just all of our plans we had, the kids and the farm and growing old together, all those things would never come to be.
So my main focus was to catch the offender. It was also 2 roles because while I was focused on the investigation and helping with the manhunt, as the commander of the Honor Guard, I had a responsibility to work with the family and help to plan a funeral.
After day 1, we were grasping at straws on where Jamie Hood might be located. There was a sick feeling I remember having, thinking, what if we can't ever find this guy? I never felt that we were getting closer as time went on. I felt like more time went on, the further away he was getting. You see the stress on people's face as they're just almost like, what if we don't get him? What if we can't find him? Jamie's reputation in law enforcement was, first of all, that he was very erratic. People that had dealt with him before had said, hey, look, this guy is, he's kind of a loose cannon. And he actually went to prison for an armed robbery and had gotten out. He was getting tied into the drug syndicate or the drug group in the Athens area. And we think that's probably what led to the kidnapping of the individual in the car and all that. The vehicle that the original kidnap victim was in, that vehicle was discovered, and we seized it and towed it to the GBI office in Athens. Crime scene specialists are actually processing that vehicle, and they find a shell casing. And the case agent believed that that was fired from the same gun that killed Amari Ray. My understanding was that Amari Ray was at home. He lived with his parents, and that somebody had knocked on the door and asked him to come outside. And he came outside and was murdered beside a carport area. Was shot multiple times, I believe with a 9mm, and left there. There were shell casings found at the scene there. And Jamie Hood was not a suspect in that case. But do we truly know how many other crimes were committed by this individual between that time or even prior to that time? We don't. There absolutely could be other crimes, maybe victims that we're not aware of. As the days wore on, I felt like, man, things are just, we should already have him. That was what's going through my head. So we started pushing information out, including pictures of Jamie Hood, and the community responded. We were getting calls. The information was coming in. It was a ton, and we're trying to decipher. And we're getting this stuff, and I'll be honest with you, the command post was buzzing. There's a lot of activity. I'm wanting to clear my head just because it's pretty crazy, and I kind of walked down to the end of the command post and just gathering my thoughts. And like it got quiet all of a sudden, and I hear one of the dispatchers who knows me, and she goes, "Trent, phone call." And so I'm just kind of like, I don't, what? And I almost was annoyed. And she goes, "It's Jamie." And I was like, "Who?" "It's Jamie." I said, "Jamie who?" "This is Jamie Hood." And that was the moment that I realized he was calling into us.
Hey, Jamie.
Hey, sir.
Hey, brother. This is Trent Hills. I'm with the GBI. How are you?
Yeah, man. I can't keep doing folk like this, man.
All right.
Can't keep carrying on this, man.
All right, man. See.
Now, look, though. Hey. I'm going to let you talk to these hostages. If you get all their names and let you know they all right, okay?
Okay. All right. Let me talk to the hostage.
When I realized I'm on the phone with this murderer, and I realized that he has people being held against their will, my mind starts racing a little bit. But at one point, he starts putting other people on the phone. And one of the first things that came out of his mouth, or the first things I remember coming out of his mouth, was, "We have babies."
Can you tell me how many folks are in there with Jamie?
Yes, it's 8 and a newborn. It's 8 and a newborn. It's 9 and all.
9 total, 8 and a newborn.
Yes, sir.
It's real. It's real. At that point, it's like, oh, wow. What if he hurts one of these kids? And he's up and down. He's very erratic. And I don't want to do anything to set him off.
Jamie, you still there, man?
Yeah, man.
Okay, but we want to get all the other people out of there, the people that are involved.
Hey, nobody needs to help until you do it. Can you?
Okay, Jamie. Okay.
Okay, tell me what you gonna do.
Okay, all right. Jamie. Jamie.
I had been thinking about seeing Buddy all week because from the moment they told me he wasn't coming home, that's all I wanted to do was go see him. And being told no was just heartbreaking. All I wanted to do was go see him. I wanted to run to him and give him a hug. As we're heading there, I start seeing helicopters and blue lights going everywhere. And I just looked over at him and I said, "Is that what I think it is?" And he said, "Yes." And I didn't ask anything further. I knew that they would take care of it, and I knew that he would be captured one way or another, and I didn't have to worry about it. when we got there and they opened the door for me to go in, they were just going to let me go by myself for a while. So I had on heels for whatever reason, and I just remember kicking off my shoes so I could run faster. And ran as fast as I could to the casket and gave him a big hug and just cried and cried and cried. When we were dating, we lived in different counties and were long distance from each other. Our parents got onto us for our long distance phone calls, so we had to write letters. And we always signed them "Love Me" because we liked the song, "Between now and then, until I see you again, I'll be loving you, love me." So we always signed our letters that way. And I had actually written a letter that I had worked on that the whole week, all the things that I wanted to say. I sat and read in my letter and just sat there and just was happy that I could finally be there and do that. That was what I told him. Was between now and then, till I see you again, I'll be loving you, love me.
I truly don't know the exact amount of time I was on the phone with him, but I know it was numerous short conversations. I'm not a negotiator. I don't have that training, but one thing that the GPI does a good job with is they teach us how to talk to people and how to relate. So that's where my mind went, is that, hey, this is just an interrogation.
Me and you are in this, buddy. We're in this together, okay?
And now you're talking my language.
Yeah, we're
Stop
in
being selfish, Fred.
Yes, sir. We're in it together. We're in it together.
You know, it's a teamwork. Hold on, when you play football, if you run the ball by yourself, you have a center and a line blocking for you.
You're right. You're right,
So
man.
let's play team ball then, bro. Let's get this over with, man.
Listen,
So y'all can go on back home.
Okay, me and you have a lot in common, man. I'm telling you right now. We want this thing to end peacefully. We want it to end smoothly. We both love football, man. It's one of my favorite things. We can talk that. We can talk football. We're in this together. Me and you are in it together.
I was trying to pull out something that we had in common, and he went from cussing me out to actually having a conversation with me and a dialogue with me.
Okay, James. All right, I want you to hear me now. I need you, before this stuff starts happening, I need you to let them kids out, man. The kids,
I get what you gonna do. You gonna let them out the way I tell you to let them out.
I know, James.
I didn't have to call you, Fred.
Okay, you're right, James. You didn't have to call us then.
So I'm having you out, Fred. Look here. It's a team over here, okay?
Okay.
When you get here, hey, you call me.
Okay, tell me where. Tell me where you want me to get the team to. I don't know where you're at right now.
Hold on, you can tell you her address.
Okay, all right. We're about to get started.
Hello.
Okay, I need to know where you're at, sweetie. Tell me what the address is.
102.
102?
Creek.
There was a sense of relief because I knew we weren't looking for him anymore. But then the anxiety of he could hurt more people was, kind of replaced that little bit of relief pretty quick.
You got the address. Get the team over here.
Okay, get the team over there.
Well, they get me to the location, and the negotiators are there listening and everything. So I was able to pass the phone off at that moment. And there was so much relief when I got that phone out of my hand.
Lieutenant Magnus, can I help you?
Hey, yeah, hold on. Do you want to keep these folks alive?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to keep these rest of these folks goddamn live over here?
Yes, sir.
You get me this school team so they can watch y'all. Don't touch you.
You don't trust us, so you want to see us on the television?
Oh yeah, y'all gonna with me.
He's wanting media there. He thought that we were going to execute him. I do think he thought that. Our biggest concern was that he was wanting to go out in a blaze of glory, for lack of a better term. It was a total relief at that moment, but we still had people in that house. And then I hear of the radio 1095, which means there's a 10 code for in custody. When he surrendered between two ladies because he was scared of having to face the consequences for his actions. And I think that's the definition of a coward. From the time that he first called to the time that I heard in custody over the radio, I believe it was right at 9 hours. It seemed like forever. And I kind of sat there, gathered myself, and I was almost like, oh, it's over, for about 5 minutes, and then realized, hey, yeah, we're gonna talk to this guy. And ego kicks in. As an investigator, you want to be the one that gets the confession.
My name's Jeff. This is Trent. We're here from GBI. We're gonna talk to you.
Oh, you Trent? Yes.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of the interview with Hood after he was taken into custody. We did not think he would talk at all. So as we get ready to do the interrogation, I totally kind of blend into the background. I want the other agent to lead it.
Oh. Y'all can give me a little time, man. I'm a minute drained, bro.
He never asked for an attorney, but he does say, I'm tired, I just really don't want to talk about it right now. So at that point, we're thinking we're not going to ask any questions, and we just kind of sat back, and he kept talking, and we let him talk.
I wanted it to be easy as possible, because I was wrong. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
You don't want to give me the depth I deserve because what I did. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean,
hey, I'm wrong, bro. I ain't here to make your job hard. The only thing I regret is hurting that damn innocent man. What else to do is hurt me to the core of my damn heart.
talking about other officers.
Yeah, his folks. He was a good one in the church having folk. That's the only thing hurt me, keeping it real.
Yes, sir.
And hurting these innocent folks. You know, these kids, you traumatize them.
I understand.
You see, whatever they give me, the care. I did it, see. We need the police. We couldn't live without you.
So he apologized or verbalized remorse for killing Buddy Christian. I'll take this with me to the grave, that everything he did was very calculating. I don't believe he felt remorse. I believe he, in his mind, that's what he had to do to try getting away that day, and that's what he was doing. Jamie, he is very streetwise. He knew what he was doing, and he was trying to manipulate the situation. From the first interview, when we left the interview, when it was concluded, we actually left in kind of good terms with the knowledge that, hey, we're coming back to talk to you again, and he seemed to be fine with that. He loves the attention, which aggravated the mess out of us. I felt like we were almost feeding into him a little bit.
We'll talk to you.
Thank you, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, it's a picture of Jamie Hood, and I don't care to see that, and that's what evil looks like. After 12 years, I'm still disgusted just to see it, just because of the coward he was and what he did to this community and the Christian family and the Howard families. It meant a lot to me that he was in custody at that moment. I just broke down. Seems like all the way before that, from the start of this 6 days ago, I kept everything in. I was focused on Buddy. I was focused on Melissa. I was focused on doing the right thing. It really hit me at really the magnitude and what we had lost as a department, as a community. Yeah, it was really tough. In any situation where an officer loses their life, they wanted to serve their community, and they gave the ultimate sacrifice. But the ones who suffer and pay the most are the families, the ones that are left behind. to pick up the pieces and to try to move on.
The body of slain officer Buddy Christian arrives at the cemetery. Hundreds of people line the path as the carriage is followed by Christian's family.
The whole procession, I think it was about 7 miles, but it was lined the whole street. The community came out. I mean, there wasn't a bare spot along the whole route. And the kids and I, we got to see all of that. And people had signs, you know, our hero, and thank you, Officer Christian, and or thank you, Buddy. And it was just amazing. But you can tell in my face, I was really an autopilot. I just really switched it off and just going through the motions. I was given the folded flag from the chief, and I just hugged it. That was, I felt like I was hugging him. It was just a beautiful tribute to someone who gave his life for his community. But then getting back home, it was like, okay, now what? And I remember sitting there with my mom and looking at the picture. I'm like, how is this real? What? I don't really believe it still. It's not, it just can't be.
He did confess to killing Buddy Christian, but he never gave us what I call a true confession, where he fills in all the gaps. He basically says, I'm sorry for killing that man. But we never got a true confession from him. I feel strong we could have took him into a courtroom that day and convicted him for the murder of Buddy. But we're trying to attach him to another homicide. I mean, we were trying our best to figure out the Amari Ray murder at that point. Through all the interviews and contact I had with Jimmy Hood, he never mentioned Amari Ray. He never did make a statement in reference to that. Amari Ray's family deserves some closure too, and there needs to be justice. So we're going to try to put that piece together.
Police tell me they are investigating Jamie Hood as a possible suspect in the shooting death of 30-year-old Kenneth Omari Ray.
His name never came up as a suspect in that case until after Buddy was murdered and we started that investigation. The relationship between Amari Ray and Jamie Hood was not as clear-cut. Our belief is that Amari Ray might have been involved in the drug trade a little bit, and we don't know if there was other grudges. We don't know that, but that seems to be the main focus of what set everything in motion. And then there was some drug trading going on that made sense that he was the one that was liable for that murder. Looking at the end results here with a dead police officer, a kidnapping, you know, we look back at it and we do feel like, hey, if we would have solved Omari Ray's murder the night of the murder, you know, this stuff wouldn't have happened. But I can't go back in time. You can't point fingers, and there are no fingers to point. If you do, you point them at yourself. So.
After 4 years, 3 judges, and 2 sets of defense attorneys, a jury is now seated for the murder trial of accused Athens cop killer Jamie Hood.
After he fired 2 sets of defense attorneys, Hood is acting as his own lawyer in this death penalty case.
I feel like in his mind, this is a big movie, and he's the star character, and everybody else is just small bit part actors in it. Never could step back from himself and say, hey, I ruined a bunch of lives here. And he liked being up there. He liked the grandstand. In my mind, he's a coward.
It's about Buddy. I miss his smile, jokes, and just his personality. He's just genuinely a really, really great guy, and I miss that.
This past February would have been our 27th wedding anniversary, and I always go to the cemetery and put new flowers on his headstone, and I try not to, get too upset about what it could have been and just try to remember, all the 15 years that we got to share together. There's just so many things that you just become one person, and when that's gone, it's like half of you died. I think half of me did die, and I've had to rebuild that other half, and it still is a journey for me to rebuild myself and figure out, who I am without him and who I still want to become, So it's just still a learning process every day. I remember him telling me, if something ever happened to me, you have to live. You have to continue our dreams and live for me, and can't sit and pine away. You have to live. And that gives me a more reason to be happy and do things, because I know he wants me to do that. So part of my joy and finding joy on this new road that I've started is I've gotten remarried. God just works in mysterious ways, and he led this wonderful man into our lives, and he knew Buddy, so he has his own stories about him, and he can tell the kids, and he knows of his character and, all those things. And when we got married, I believe Callie was 8 or just about to turn 9, and she said, "My family's whole again." So she was so happy to have a dad here and a dad in heaven, and it just was really beautiful the way we were able to weave everything together. A lot of people get stuck and don't continue on with that fork in the road, but I decided I was going to do all that I could to live like he told me to, and, show the kids that, yes, this happened, but it's not going to define our life, and we're still going to live a good life and our best life and honor your dad and keep him in our heart, and, still do all these dreams. They'll be different dreams, but they're going to have pieces of what I had started out on. And, it did not defeat us. We will overcome it.
It seemed fake, like we were in a movie or something when I was hearing this stuff. It did. But he was a good person until this point in his life. That just tears you up to think somebody you love so much could really be that person inside.
The heavy London fog of November 1988 did not merely roll through the cobblestone alleyways of Soho. It swallowed them whole, masking the dark secrets of a city that was rapidly changing yet stubbornly clinging to its grim, historic shadows. On a freezing Tuesday midnight, just off Old Compton Street, the ambient noise of West End theaters fading into the distance was shattered by a low, hollow thud inside a decrepit Victorian townhouse that had stood abandoned for over a decade. Inside, surrounded by rotting wallpaper peeling like dead skin and dusty floorboards that groaned under the slightest weight, lay the body of 32-year-old gallery owner Eleanor Vance. Her life had been cut short with surgical precision, a single silken cord wrapped tightly around her neck, leaving no blood, no struggle, and no immediate answers for the horrified beat cop who stumbled upon the open front door during a routine patrol. The air inside the room was heavy with the suffocating scent of stale dampness, cheap lavender perfume, and the distinct, metallic tang of sudden, violently interrupted life. Eleanor had vanished 3 days earlier after leaving an upscale art opening in Mayfair, driving off into the swirling autumn mist in her metallic blue Jaguar, a vehicle later found parked neatly 3 miles away with the keys still resting untouched in the ignition. Her handbag was untouched, her diamond rings still glistened on her pale, freezing fingers, and her expensive leather coat remained neatly buttoned up against the chill, instantly ruling out a botched robbery or a desperate mugging in the dark corners of the West End. Scotland Yard rushed to the scene, floodlights cutting through the thick fog as seasoned detectives in heavy woolen overcoats lined the narrow alley, taking flash photographs that illuminated the ghost-like crime scene in violent bursts of white light. The initial examination revealed no signs of forced entry, suggesting with chilling clarity that Eleanor had either known her executioner intimately or had been lured into that decaying sanctuary under the guise of an urgent, secret rendezvous. The local community was instantly plunged into a state of paralyzed terror as news outlets seized upon the horrific narrative of a young, successful woman swallowed by the night in the heart of London's most vibrant neighborhood. Headlines blared across the morning papers, screaming of the Mayfair heiress murders and painting a portrait of a predator hunting in the shadows of the capital's elite social circles. Yet, despite the wall-to-wall press coverage and the frantic canvassing of hundreds of local residents, business owners, and midnight revelers, the killer seemed to have evaporated into the damp London night without leaving a single fingerprint, a stray fiber, or a clear footprint on the ancient, dust-covered floors of the abandoned property. Detectives interrogated everyone from high-profile art collectors who had attended the exhibition to the low-level street hustlers who haunted Soho's neon-lit corners after dark, but every lead led straight into an impenetrable brick wall of silence and speculation. The mystery grew deeper when forensic analysts discovered a tiny, hand-carved wooden token tucked beneath Eleanor's left palm, an obscure symbol etched into its surface depicting a weeping willow tree, a detail the police deliberately withheld from the public to catch any potential caller in a trap of exclusive knowledge. Days stretched into weeks, and weeks bled into months, while the relentless rain washed away any remaining physical traces outside the old Victorian house, leaving Scotland Yard with a mountain of cold, unyielding files, and a growing sense of helplessness. The investigation, codenamed Operation Willow, mobilized dozens of dedicated investigators who worked grueling 16-hour shifts, sifting through hundreds of tips that flooded the switchboards, yet none provided the missing piece of the puzzle. Eleanor's family, wealthy industrialists with deep connections in Parliament, put up a massive reward for information, sparking a frenzy of mercenary informants and conspiracy theorists who only succeeded in muddying the waters and overwhelming the primary investigative team. The murder seemed to defy the laws of probability, executed with a calm, methodical efficiency that hinted at a perpetrator who was either profoundly lucky or chillingly experienced in the art of violent vanishings. As the winter of 1988 gave way to a damp, dreary spring, the frantic energy of the early investigation began to wane, replaced by a suffocating dread that the person who strangled Eleanor Vance was walking the streets of London, entirely undetected and completely unpunished. Every dark alley in Soho became a monument to an unsolved nightmare, and every passing shadow seemed to carry the weight of a killer who had pulled off the perfect crime under the very noses of the world's most famous police force. The architecture of the Victorian house on Old Compton Street itself became a central character in the growing enigma, its history analyzed by investigators seeking any hidden reason why Eleanor Vance's body was dumped or brought to that specific, rotting structure. Built in the late 1860s, the building had once belonged to a prominent Victorian merchant before descending through decades of neglect into a temporary haven for squatters, underground artists, and clandestine meetings far from the watchful eyes of polite society. Detectives discovered that the lock on the heavy oak front door had been bypassed not with a crowbar or a crude lockpick, but with a working key, a realization that sent shockwaves through the investigative team and narrowed the focus toward someone who possessed intimate access to the property's forgotten chain of ownership. Records at the land registry were a chaotic tangle of shell companies, deceased estates, and offshore trusts, making it nearly impossible to pinpoint who currently held the physical keys to the building. The room where Eleanor was found was situated on the ground floor, just beyond a hallway lined with fading, water-stained wallpaper depicting Victorian floral patterns, creating a surreal, claustrophobic backdrop for a crime scene that looked staged for maximum psychological impact. Her body had been laid out with a strange, deliberate care, her arms folded across her chest in an almost ceremonial posture, a detail that deeply disturbed the lead pathologist, who noted that such post-mortem manipulation often pointed to a perpetrator experiencing profound guilt or a twisted sense of devotion toward the victim. The silken cord used as the murder weapon was analyzed under high-powered microscopes at the Metropolitan Police Forensic Laboratory, revealing it to be a rare, high-grade Italian silk typically used in bespoke tailoring or high-end theatrical drapery, a clue that pointed away from the street level and directly toward the opulent world Eleanor inhabited. Yet, despite this distinct physical evidence, no tailor, merchant, or importer across the United Kingdom could account for that specific dye batch, leaving investigators clutching at invisible threads as the trail went cold. Meanwhile, the discovery of the wooden token with the weeping willow carving continued to baffle the lead detectives, who consulted criminologists, historians, and even experts in occult symbolism to decipher its meaning, all of whom offered wildly conflicting theories that yielded no actionable suspects. The media's fascination with the case turned into a relentless circus, with journalists camping outside Eleanor's Mayfair gallery, questioning her grief-stricken business partners and scrutinizing her private life for any hint of scandal or hidden danger. Eleanor had been a rising star in the contemporary art world, known for her sharp intellect, fierce independence, and an uncanny ability to discover forgotten artistic talent, but her personal life was fiercely guarded, kept strictly separate from her public persona. Friends described her as warm yet elusive, a woman who rarely spoke of her past or her personal relationships, creating a blank canvas upon which the press projected endless, sensationalized theories. Was she involved with a dangerous figure from the London underworld? Had she uncovered a massive art forgery syndicate operating out of the West End? Or had she simply caught the eye of a predatory stranger who followed her into the dark fog after the exhibition ended? Every theory was meticulously tested, every contact listed in her leather-bound address book was visited and subjected to rigorous interrogation, but every single line of inquiry collapsed under the weight of airtight alibis and a complete lack of corroborating physical evidence. As the first anniversary of Eleanor Vance's murder approached in the late autumn of 1989, the Cold Case Unit at Scotland Yard attempted a dramatic tactical reset, assigning a fresh team of investigators who were tasked with reviewing every single page of the original case files with unblinking, critical eyes. This new team, led by Detective Chief Inspector Thomas Reed, a stern, analytical officer known for his relentless obsession with forensic details, believed that the original investigation had been blinded by the high-profile nature of the victim and the media frenzy surrounding her wealthy family. Reed ordered a complete re-examination of the physical evidence, shipping the clothes Eleanor wore on the night of her death to specialized laboratories across Europe in a desperate bid to leverage emerging techniques in microscopic trace analysis. They found microscopic flecks of industrial paint on the hem of her wool coat, a blue polymer compound commonly used in marine transport and dockyard maintenance, suggesting that Eleanor or her killer had spent time near the River Thames or an industrial shipyard shortly before her death. This tiny, volatile clue redirected a massive portion of the police response toward the eastern docks of London, where investigators spent months searching through dusty shipping logs, interviewing dock workers, and inspecting abandoned warehouses along the riverbanks. Yet, like every lead before it, the paint flecks proved to be a red herring, leading to a sprawling web of industrial companies that had no verifiable connection to Eleanor Vance, her gallery, or the Victorian house in Soho. The psychological toll on the investigative team was immense. Detective Inspector Reed became notorious within the department for pacing his office late into the night, staring at a massive chalkboard covered in photos of the crime scene, maps of London, and the names of over 300 potential witnesses who had been cleared. The mysterious anonymous tips that continued to trickle in via public payphones across the city only added to the frustration, as cruel pranksters and deeply disturbed individuals sought to insert themselves into a tragedy that had captured the nation's dark imagination. One caller, speaking in a low, raspy whisper from a phone box near King's Cross Station, claimed that Eleanor was buried in a concrete foundation of a new high-rise building, while another insisted that her murder was part of a ritualistic society operating within the highest echelons of British nobility. Each call had to be logged, traced, and thoroughly investigated, draining valuable time and resources from a department already straining under the weight of rising crime rates across the capital during the late 1980s. The murder weapon, the pristine silken cord, remained stored in a climate-controlled evidence locker at Scotland Yard, a silent, immovable testament to a violent act that had left no biological trace in an era just on the threshold of the DNA revolution. Investigators knew that without a sudden, miraculous breakthrough or a confession from the perpetrator, the file on Eleanor Vance would eventually be shelved, joining the tragic ledger of unsolved London homicides that gathered dust in the basement archives of the Metropolitan Police. The passage of time did nothing to dull the haunting resonance of the case within the local community of Soho, where the Victorian townhouse on Old Compton Street quickly acquired a sinister reputation among residents and tour guides alike. The building remained vacant, its windows boarded up with thick plywood sheets that were soon covered in layers of decaying event posters, graffiti, and crude warnings drawn by neighborhood teenagers who dared each other to step inside after midnight. Local shopkeepers spoke in hushed tones about the cold spot that seemed to hover around the front entrance, a physical reminder of the night an elegant young woman walked into the darkness and never walked out again. For the residents who had lived in the area in 1988, the unsolved murder changed the very texture of their daily lives. Doors that had previously been left unlocked were now secured with multiple deadbolts, and women walked through the foggy streets of the West End with a new, sharp sense of vigilance, constantly checking over their shoulders for footsteps echoing behind them. Eleanor's mother, Arthurine Vance, devoted the remainder of her life and her substantial personal fortune to keeping her daughter's memory alive, founding a charitable trust in Eleanor's name and funding private investigators who relentlessly pursued leads across Europe and North America. Mrs. Vance appeared on national television programs every year on the anniversary of the murder, her face etched with a profound, unyielding grief as she appealed directly to the conscience of the killer or anyone who might be guarding a deadly secret out of fear or misplaced loyalty. "Someone knows who did this," she would say, her voice trembling with a mixture of heartbreak and fierce determination, looking straight into the camera lens. London is a city of millions, but a secret this dark cannot remain buried forever. It rots the soul of anyone who carries it. Yet, despite her heartbreaking pleas and the massive monetary rewards offered year after year, the silence from the public was absolute, a wall of cold disinterest that seemed to settle over the case as the 1980s gave way to the rapid, forward-looking energy of the 1990s. The original lead detectives retired one by one, handing off the heavy vinyl binders of Operation Willow to a new generation of investigators who viewed the case through the lens of cold case protocol rather than the urgent, frantic energy of an active crime scene. The world moved on, technology evolved at a breathtaking pace, and the dark, foggy London of 1988 was slowly demolished and rebuilt into a glittering, modern metropolis of glass, steel, and digital surveillance cameras that monitored every square inch of the West End. But beneath the shiny surface of the modern city, the cold case of Eleanor Vance remained an open, bleeding wound in the records of Scotland Yard, a stark reminder of the limits of traditional police work in the face of a calculated, silent murderer. By the turn of the millennium, the file on Eleanor Vance had officially transitioned into the newly formed Cold Case Homicide Unit at Scotland Yard, where a small team of specialized detectives utilized cutting-edge forensic science to re-examine historic, unsolved crimes that had baffled previous generations. The primary breakthrough that officers hoped for was the emergence of advanced DNA profiling techniques, which were revolutionary compared to the rudimentary blood typing methods available back in 1988. Technicians in sterile, white-lit laboratories carefully retrieved the original physical evidence from the secure vaults, opening the sealed paper bags containing Eleanor's silk dress, her leather coat, and the pristine silken cord that had ended her life. Using delicate swabbing methods and advanced chemical light sources, forensic specialists searched every millimeter of the fabric for touch DNA, microscopic skin cells left behind by the perpetrator's hands during the intense physical effort of strangulation. To their bitter disappointment, the original handling of the evidence in 1988, combined with the storage conditions of the late 20th century, had degraded much of the delicate biological material, yielding only partial, inconclusive genetic profiles that could not be matched against the National DNA Database. The wooden token carved with the weeping willow tree was also subjected to intense forensic re-examination, tested for chemical residues, trace DNA, and modern wood type matching through specialized botanical analysis. The analysis revealed that the token was made from ancient European willow wood, likely harvested from a tree growing along the banks of the River Thames, but the surface had been wiped entirely clean of biological evidence, further proving the chillingly meticulous nature of the killer. The cold case team spent years cross-referencing the partial DNA profiles with newly registered offenders across the United Kingdom, running hundreds of automated database searches that continuously return the same soul-crushing result: no match found. The investigation seemed hopelessly trapped in a time loop where every modern scientific innovation brought a brief flash of hope, only to end in the same wall of frustration that had defeated Inspector Reed and his team decades earlier. The media interest in the case had long since faded into occasional late-night true crime documentaries that recycled the same grainy archival footage of old Compton Street wrapped in police tape, treating the tragedy as an atmospheric piece of historical trivia rather than an active murder inquiry. As the 20th anniversary came and went, followed by the 30th, the belief that Eleanor Vance's murderer would ever face justice dissolved into a bleak consensus among veteran police officers, who privately acknowledged that the perpetrator was likely either dead, incarcerated for another crime, or living comfortably in an unshakable anonymity that science simply could not break. Decades drifted by, and the physical landscape of Soho transformed so drastically that the original crime scene became almost unrecognizable to those who had walked its streets in the late 1980s. The Victorian townhouse on Old Compton Street, long considered an eyesore and a safety hazard by the local council, was finally slated for complete demolition in the spring of 2015 to make way for a luxury residential complex and high-end boutique storefronts. As construction crews stripped the building down to its brick foundation, cold case investigators were called back to the site for one final, painstaking search of the property before it was turned into dust and concrete. Equipped with ground-penetrating radar, cadaver dogs, and modern digital scanning equipment, the forensic team searched beneath the rotting floorboards, inside the hollow plaster walls, and deep within the ancient brick cellar that had remained sealed for over 30 years. The cadaver dogs signaled near a small, hidden crawlspace beneath the rear staircase, prompting workers to carefully remove layers of crumbling masonry and damp earth that had lain undisturbed since the late 19th century. Inside the cramped, airless void, investigators discovered a rusted metal tin, its latch corroded shut by decades of moisture, which was carefully extracted and sent to the forensic pathology lab under heavy police escort. When the tin was opened under controlled laboratory conditions, officers found a collection of personal items that sent a jolt of electricity through the entire cold case unit: a silver charm bracelet belonging to a teenager who had gone missing from North London in 1982, a faded silk scarf associated with an unsolved disappearance in 1985, and a single, elegant leather glove that matched the one Eleanor Vance was wearing on the night she was killed. The realization hit the investigative team with the force of a physical blow. Eleanor Vance was not the isolated victim of an opportunistic killer or a personal vendetta, but part of a terrifying, silent sequence of crimes executed by a hidden serial predator who had used the abandoned Soho townhouse as a private trophy vault for over a decade. The discovery instantly reignited the investigation, transforming Operation Willow from a solitary cold case into a massive, multi-decade serial homicide task force that reopened files on missing women across the Greater London area from 1975 to 1990. The press caught wind of the hidden vault, and headlines once again screamed across the evening news, terrifying a new generation of Londoners with the realization that a monster had operated in the shadows of their city without leaving a trace for nearly 40 years. Yet, despite the staggering historical significance of the discovery in the basement, the contents of the rusted tin yielded no direct biological evidence or names, leaving detectives with a terrifying catalog of victims but still no face, no identity, and no closer to an arrest than they were in 1988. The burden of the unsolved case hung heavily over the Metropolitan Police Service as the decades continued to stack up, turning the file of Eleanor Vance into a symbol of institutional frustration and unresolved grief that haunted the corridors of Scotland Yard. By the year 2024, 36 years after Eleanor walked out of the Mayfair Gallery and into the dark fog, the original investigators had almost all passed away, leaving only their handwritten notes, faded Polaroids, and carefully indexed evidence boxes to speak for them. The world had crossed into an era of unprecedented technological surveillance, where digital records, facial recognition, and massive genealogical databases made the idea of remaining truly anonymous almost unthinkable, yet the killer of Old Compton Street remained a phantom from a forgotten age. The Vance family fortune had been exhausted by decades of relentless private inquiries, and Eleanor's mother had died in 2018, her heart broken, never knowing who had taken her only daughter's life on that cold November night. The Cold Case Unit, now operating out of a high-tech facility filled with glowing computer monitors and predictive crime algorithms, continued to run periodic checks on the partial DNA profiles retrieved from the trophy tin, hoping that a distant relative of the killer might submit their genetic data to a commercial ancestry website. This new frontier of genetic genealogy had solved dozens of notorious cold cases across North America and Europe, creating a brief, intense window of hope that the Phantom of Soho might finally be identified through a third cousin or a long-lost nephew. Every month, analysts uploaded the complex, degraded genetic sequence into specialized research databases, waiting for the system to flag a potential family tree that could lead them back to London in the late 1980s. But the database searches continually returned dead ends, suggesting that the perpetrator's familial line was either extremely small, non-existent within the commercial testing systems, or rooted in an overseas population that had never engaged with modern consumer DNA services. The investigators felt as though they were chasing a ghost who had anticipated every future scientific advance, a predator who had stepped out of the fog, committed heinous acts with surgical precision, and then dissolved back into the ether without leaving a single trace for posterity to grab hold of. The files on Operation Willow sat on the server drives of the police network, accessed less and less frequently as new, urgent cases demanded the immediate attention of the limited cold case staff. It seemed written in stone that the murder of Eleanor Vance would forever remain an unsolved chapter in London's dark, bloody history, a cautionary tale of a crime so perfectly executed that time itself had been forced to surrender to the silence. Then, on a dreary, rain-slicked Tuesday evening in early 2026, 38 years after the cord was drawn tight in that Soho hallway, the static calm of the Scotland Yard switchboard was shattered by an incoming call that would change everything in a matter of seconds. The call came through at exactly 11:42 p.m., routed through a public payphone that, miraculously, still functioned near a lonely bus shelter on the outskirts of Greenwich, far from the modern bustle of central London. The operator answered with the standard, clinical greeting, but was met with an unsettling, long silence broken only by the rhythmic, heavy sound of raspy breathing and the soft pitter-patter of rain hitting the glass of the phone booth. Just as the operator was about to terminate the line, assuming it was another dead dial or a drunken prank, a low, gravelly voice, frail with age yet chillingly precise in its pronunciation, cut through the static, speaking words that sent an immediate chill down the spine of the officer monitoring the line. "I am calling about the girl in Soho, Eleanor Vance," the voice whispered, the tone devoid of panic, arrogance, or hesitation, carrying the quiet, heavy weight of someone who had carried a mountain on his chest for nearly 4 decades. The operator immediately triggered the high-priority recording and tracing protocols, signaling to the duty supervisor that an active confession or high-value tip regarding a historic homicide was currently on the line. The caller did not wait for questions, nor did he ask for immunity or money. Instead, he began reciting details about the crime scene that had never been released to the media, details that had been locked away in the most confidential vaults of Scotland Yard since November 1988. He described the exact pattern of the floral wallpaper in the ground floor room, the precise position of Eleanor's hands folded across her chest, and the exact wording of a personal inscription that was written on the back of the wooden willow token found beneath her pale palm. The duty supervisor's heart hammered against his ribs as he listened to the live feed, realizing with absolute, terrifying certainty that the person speaking into the receiver on the other side of London was the phantom they had hunted for nearly 4 decades. "Why now?" the operator asked, her voice calm, steady, and carefully trained to keep the caller engaged while emergency response vehicles were dispatched toward the Greenwich location. The caller paused, a long, ragged exhale echoing through the digital receiver, before offering an answer that was as chilling as it was simple. Because the clock has run out, and I refuse to take her name with me into the dark. The line went dead with a sharp, definitive click before police officers could trace the call to its exact physical location, but the information provided during those crucial 3 minutes was more than enough to reignite the largest cold case hunt in modern British history. The caller had left behind 3 distinct pieces of information: a specific address in a quiet, residential neighborhood of South London, a name that had never appeared anywhere in the original 3,000-page investigative file, and the exact location of the original wooden carving tools used to fashion the Weeping Willow token. Within 45 minutes of the phone call, heavily armed tactical units, accompanied by senior cold case detectives and forensic specialists, surrounded a modest, red-brick suburban bungalow on a quiet street in Blackheath. The house was dark, shrouded in the late-night silence of a sleepy neighborhood, its garden overgrown with unpruned shrubs and weeping willow trees that hung low over the damp front lawn. Officers breached the front door with a heavy battering ram, their boots echoing through the narrow hallway as they called out the name provided by the anonymous caller, Arthur Pendleton, an 81-year-old retired watchmaker and former antique restorer who had lived alone in the property for over 30 years. Inside, the house was a living museum of another era, filled with thousands of ticking clocks, antique furniture, and the distinct, dry smell of old wood, brass polish, and aged paper. In the rear sitting room, sitting quietly in a high-backed leather armchair facing a cold fireplace, sat Arthur Pendleton, dressed in a faded tweed suit, his hands resting calmly on his lap as if he had been waiting for the police to arrive for nearly 40 years. On the small wooden table beside his chair lay a worn, leather-bound journal, an old set of fine carving chisels, and the matching second half of the wooden willow token that had been found in Eleanor Vance's hand in 1988. As officers moved in to place him under arrest, Pendleton offered no resistance, no protestations of innocence, and no anger. He simply looked up at the lead detective with tired, hollow eyes and whispered, "It took you long enough." The arrest knocked the quiet neighborhood into a state of utter hysteria as news vans, floodlights, and police tape surrounded the suburban street, transforming a quiet corner of Blackheath into the focal point of the nation's media. The interrogation of Arthur Pendleton at Scotland Yard was a masterclass in psychological tension, conducted over 3 grueling days by the city's top homicide detectives, who sat across from a man who was simultaneously a fragile, dying octogenarian and a chillingly calculated serial predator. Pendleton spoke with a calm, detached precision, detailing his life as an exquisite craftsman who had used his high-level restoration business in the 1980s as a cover to access elite social events, private properties, and vulnerable victims across London. He explained how he had acquired the key to the abandoned Soho townhouse years prior through an estate clearance job, transforming the vacant property into a private hunting ground where he could execute his twisted, dark fantasies without fear of interruption. On the night of November 15th, 1988, he had targeted Eleanor Vance after seeing her at the Mayfair Gallery opening, offering her a ride when her own vehicle was intentionally tampered with by his hands earlier that evening. He recounted how he had lured her into the old Compton Street house under the pretense of showing her an uncatalogued 17th-century masterpiece he claimed to have stored inside, only to turn on her in the dark hallway with the silken cord he had crafted from historic tapestry materials. When asked about the Weeping Willow tokens, Pendleton revealed with unsettling chilliness that they were his personal signature, a mark of his absolute control over life and death, carved from the willow tree growing in his own front garden. Forensic teams searching his Blackheath home uncovered a secret compartment hidden behind a heavy oak bookshelf in his basement workshop, revealing a terrifying archive of photographs, personal effects, and detailed written logs of his crimes dating back to 1978. The logs definitively linked Pendleton not only to Eleanor Vance, but to 4 other unsolved disappearances across London, solving a web of cold cases that had haunted the capital for nearly half a century. The news of his full confession swept across the globe like a thunderclap, sending shockwaves through the law enforcement community and dominating headlines from London to New York. The public was both horrified and captivated by the realization that the polite, elderly watchmaker who had lived a quiet, unassuming life in the suburbs was, in reality, one of the most prolific and elusive serial killers in British history. For 38 years, he had walked among them, fixed their antique clocks, exchanged pleasantries over the garden fence, and watched the police struggle on television while holding the dark truth tightly in his chest. The final chapter of the Eleanor Vance murder mystery arrived not in a dramatic courtroom battle, but in the quiet, solemn corridors of the Old Bailey, where an ailing Arthur Pendleton was brought to face justice for his decades of unpunished terror. Bound to a wheelchair and breathing with the aid of a medical oxygen tank, the man who had outsmarted Scotland Yard for nearly 40 years formally pleaded guilty to 5 counts of first-degree murder, offering no excuses, no defense, and no pleas for mercy. The courtroom was packed to absolute capacity with remaining family members of the victims, retired detectives who had worked the case in their youth, and a public still reeling from the shocking resolution of a cold case that had defined a generation. The presiding judge sentenced Pendleton to 5 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, describing his actions as a campaign of calculated, heartless cruelty that left a permanent scar on the heart of London. Yet, as the sentence was read aloud, there was no loud celebration, no triumphant cheering from the gallery, only a heavy, profound silence that reflected the immense, irreversible tragedy of 38 years of stolen lives and delayed justice. Eleanor Vance's surviving relatives released a brief statement outside the courthouse, thanking the cold case unit and acknowledging the strange, poetic twist of fate that an anonymous phone call from a dying killer had finally brought the truth into the light. The Victorian townhouse on Old Compton Street was long gone, replaced by modern developments that showed no trace of the darkness that had occurred within its walls in November 1988. But the story of the London 1988 cold case, a tale of a bright life extinguished, an investigation frozen in time, and a 38-year mystery shattered by a voice in the rain, remains etched into the dark folklore of the city forever. It stands as a chilling testament to the fact that while time may wash away footprints and fade handwritten evidence files, the truth possesses a strange, persistent weight that refuses to stay buried, waiting in the shadows until the final call is made.